conversation on race will likely sound very different than what we heard the Democrats say last week. The deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Rayshard Brooks sent thousands into the streets. The Black Lives Matter movement expanding and leading the charge, while the debate over defunding the police also grew.
And the president has called that group a symbol of hate, played into racial fears by warning suburban voters with veiled threats of an invasion, while also saying he's done more for black people than any other president in modern history. Our Steve Osunsami has more now on how voters see all of this.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay. Donald Trump, go away.
This is a president who is regularly described as racist by black and brown Americans.
Every time you get on Twitter, every time you say anything, sir, you're saying it out of violence, out of hate. And we're tired of being hated.
And in the streets, where the protests have helped reawaken many in this country to issues of racial injustice, they are not kind to President Trump. For many minorities who say they could never vote for the man, their grievances began on day one of his first campaign, just after he and his wife rode that escalator down into history.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
In one breath, he appears to defend neo-Nazis who fought with leftist groups in Virginia.
They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
They didn't put themselves down as the other. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
In another breath, he says he doesn't have a racist bone in his body.
I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world.
In his opinion, he's done more to help black Americans in particular than any other president in modern history, with opportunity zones for black businesses and an economy that for the most of his presidency was booming. Even some of his greatest black critics stood behind him when he signed into law criminal justice reforms.
And again, nobody has done more for black Americans than I have.
I understand.
Paris Dennard agrees and believes a growing number of black Americans are joining him. You see him often sitting in the background at the president's rallies.
If this man was a racist, he's the worst racist I've ever seen, I've ever met, I've ever tried to get elected and reelected, because that's not what you do. You don't want to be seen. You don't want to invest, empower, uplift black communities and brown communities and those that are forgotten men and women. You don't fight for them like he does. Even when you only got 8% of the vote, it doesn't make political sense to do what he does, but he's not doing it just for politics. He's doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Dennard once worked in George Bush's White House and says black voters need to pay a lot more attention to this comment from Joe Biden.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump and you ain't black.
The black community is not a monolith. And we are fair, open-minded, and independent thinkers in this 2020 election.
It's got to be difficult to be a black Trump supporter in today's environment among black Americans.
No, it's not. I would say that for me, it's not, because I remember something that my granny and my papa taught me years ago. They said, know who you are and whose you are. And if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so for me, I proudly walk around with my MAGA hat. I proudly tell people that I'm a Trump supporter. I proudly go on shows like this to show people that it's okay.
He says that efforts by people on the left to defund police forces in this country are a winning issue for the president, because even in communities of color, families want the police to help keep them safe.
What has Trump done for black Americans? Well, aside from the bill he recently signed for HBCUs, there really isn't much else.
What has Donald Trump done for black people? Are you serious? Donald Trump has done nothing for black people, let me be clear. The government he represents condones the killing of black people across the country.
In my opinion, the one positive thing Donald Trump has done for black people is to expose to the nation what many of us already knew, and that's that racial injustices and inequalities are still very much alive and well.
To many minorities in this country, the president is riding a new wave of fear among white Americans that took off with the election of this nation's first black president. He has promised to make America great again, and many voters of color are asking, great again for whom? For this couple in St. Louis, who stood outside their home and pointed their guns at black protesters, they will be appearing at the president's convention this week. Or for these people,
Trump's supporting your illegal cousins today.
All across America.
Please leave my vehicle.
Is that because I'm white?
No, sir.
You're
not
You're a
Oh, man. Whose racism is so fueled by their ideas of this president that they even say his name as they're recorded in public telling other Americans that the president is going to send them somewhere else.
Trump's gonna you. Asian piece of.
So when President Trump says he's going to keep criminals from invading the suburbs,
I'm the only thing standing between the American dream and total anarchy, madness, and chaos.
many Americans hear a racist dog whistle that's quiet but quite effective.
This is a tried and true tactic in American politics, appealing to white resentment, white racial anxiety, and white prejudice. It's something that has been done with great success by conservative political candidates going back many, many years.
But in this case, the fear of losing ground to Black and brown people seems to be a strong motivator in this election.
If I've had 100% or 90% of the good stuff, and now you're telling me I got to make do with maybe just 70 or maybe 62%, which is the percentage of the country that's white, like saying that I only get my share, that I don't also get your share, right, feels like oppression. The more we move toward equality, those who have had privilege and advantage often don't have the coping skills to deal with equity.
It is absolutely 100% certain that racial fear will be at the polls this November. And as the president likes to say, on both sides. For ABC News Live, I'm Steve Osunsami in Atlanta.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.